I will be talking about these 9 things during the presentation. I'll spend maybe a minute for each. I don't have to explain each one here, but this is just to guide you an idea of the direction that I'm going to take. So just to step back, whenever we talk about energy, about power, there are originally three major concerns: availability, reliability, and affordability. And in fact, the reason why we had IPIRA was we had, as mentioned earlier by Ricky, until now, we are still the most expensive, okay, or second most expensive. So they were looking at, okay, it's no longer affordable. And then very recently, because of concerns of climate change and the environment, we added sustainability. Just below that, I just show you one case, like it's case of Mindoro. It's amazing because the first one reported by the Philippine News Agency was actually in August 3rd, 2021, when they said government agencies to look into Mindoro power crisis, according to the palace. A year after, July 5, 2022, they were still talking about probe-eyed on Occidental Mindoro power crisis. By the way, if you look at April 21, 2023, Oriental Mindoro appeals for government Marcos action to power crisis. If you check it until now, that power problem has not been solved. Okay, so we have a problem, and because I think many of our audience here comes from the LGUs, I would just want to point out that whenever we have a power problem in our locality, I think the knee-jerk reaction for many of our local government leaders is to look at the national government and ask the national government to solve that problem for us. I'll leave that as a question, whether that is the best course of action to take, and then I can discuss it later. Now, why do we need to transition to renewable energy? I think that was the reasons before, but there is a new dimension, and it is a question of energy security. We thought before that we can easily import coal and oil, until that assumption was destroyed when there was war in Ukraine. And with the instability in the world right now, that issue about energy security is a major one for the country, especially that right now, I think only 22% of our energy mix comes from renewable energy. The rest of that comes from imported fuel. And so we are at risk. If we cannot import, we are done. Now, this is the Philippine Energy Plan 2020 to 2040. What I would like to highlight there is from 2020 to 2030, okay, from 15.2 gigawatts, it's now 29. It's projected to, our demand is projected to reach 29.1 gigawatts, practically double in 10 years. And then from 2030 to 2040, it's almost double, from 30 to 54.6. So we double practically every year. Now, the target of the plan is by 2030, our energy mix would increase to 35%, and then 50% by 2040. Now, what does it mean? If you get 35% RE share by 2030 and convert that, that is equivalent to around 10,195 megawatts. Okay? And then if we assume 55 billion or $1 million per megawatt, that is an investment worth 561 billion. If solar is equal to $1 million per megawatt. I'll move to 2040, and it is 50% share of a projected demand of by the time in 2040, 53.6, then we are talking of 25,327 megawatts. And if you multiply that again by $1 million, 55 million pesos, we are talking about an investment of 1.4 trillion. Now, question. Excuse me. If you are an LGU, if you are a governor, if you are a mayor, okay, you are a city mayor, and you look at these numbers, how do you position yourself? Do you look at it as an opportunity for the LGU or not? Okay, now remember, that's huge money. I'm just talking here of maybe 2 trillion worth of investments in a matter of, what, 20 years or even less. Okay, now, so first, before we go to the response, just very basic, and I think this everybody is very familiar with it, but I just want to emphasize something. This is the traditional electricity industry structure, which is one way from generation, transmission, generation. Whenever we talk about electricity in the country, we are always looking at that. And it is highly centralized. It is biased for large generating power plants. And most of the time, power generation is very location specific. Either because, let's say, if you talk about hydro, okay, you need to be in Angat because, okay, the source of hydroelectric happens to be in Angat. You cannot bring that to, okay, Manila. If you talk about geothermal, for example, it has to be in Tiwi. You cannot move that because there is a specific location. The same with coal, while theoretically you can move the coal plants, but in terms of economics and other social concerns, you have to put the coal plant away from population centers and make it accessible also to the delivery of coal, imported coal, so there's access to the sea. So many of the decisions with regards to electricity development were actually influenced by the location or the source of energy. But this thing is being challenged now. And it is challenged because of technology. No? I'll just show you this picture. This is the picture of my municipality. Unfortunately, when I was the mayor, I tried to ask if I can develop that our hydroelectric resource into a power plant. I was not allowed by then because at that time, the local government code was not yet approved. And then I was still a mayor. Actually, in 1992, I ended my term. And then the local government code was approved. It was already my vice mayor who was able to implement that. Okay, so there was a joint venture between our municipality, which owns 25% of that 3-megawatt plant, and then the whole electric cooperative one owns 75%. But if you ask ourselves, okay, out of the 47 municipalities of Bohol, there are only 3 municipalities which have hydros. Why is that? Because it depends on whether you have the river and you have the necessary source that you can develop. All of that changed because of technology. Because right now, if you look at how technology is doing, for the first time in human history, you can put a small power plant on the roof of your own house, which was not available before. Unlike hydro or even wind, where you have to get a survey of where you have a very good wind. Oh, the sun is available everywhere. And so from a very highly centralized way in which energy is generated and distributed, the industry now, because of technology, whether they like it or not, is moving into distributed energy resources. This is the best analogy that we can think of in relation that we can compare is what happened in the communications industry. So before we only focused on mass media, and then all of a sudden came social media, where everybody became a source. That is what happened. So before there was only the big news outfits will be the source of the news. Now everybody could be a source of the news. And that is driven by technology. And that change in the electricity industry is actually driven by technology. So the sun is an energy resource available to all. And so there's no excuse now for a local government to say, hey, I cannot go into the energy industry because I don't have a source of geothermal or hydro. No, you have the sun, which is available to all of us. And so what do we see whenever we talk about solar? Most of the time, it is a large solar farm. A large solar farm follows the very traditional model of the industry. You are just replacing, for example, a coal plant with a large solar farm. But the way it is structured is the same. You have a large generation, then you need huge transmission, and then it goes to distribution. However, when you talk about rooftop solar, you reverse the entire process. You start at the end. Okay? You start at the house, you generate the power, You supply power directly to the house, and whatever excess, it is fed into the distribution lines. And if it is more than what the local utility would need, it could be fed to the grid and be made available to all others who would need. And so it's a very different model. And because of that change in model, it opens a lot of opportunities. And by the way, just a comment here. By the way, if you go into solar, there is no fuel supply risk. And then the questions now would say, but what happens if, okay, during at night, battery is still very expensive. By the way, just a news, there is the latest microinverter technology is already grid forming, meaning even without battery, even if there is a brownout, no, it can produce power enough for your house. This is done by the top global manufacturer of microinverter. Anyway, okay, here. So one concept now that is being actually floated is like a virtual power plant. A virtual power plant is more reliable, no concentration risk, because if you have a 100 megawatt power plant and you put it in one area, like you put it in Pampanga, and then it rains in Pampanga, it becomes cloudy in Pampanga, then the production of that 100 megawatt power plant goes down at the same time. But if you imagine that you spread that over a very large area into smaller installations, then there is no concentration risk. It is also more efficient because you don't have to transmit that power over long distances. And there's no problem whether the grid can still afford it because you go to the distribution areas immediately. And it is, excuse me, I think it is socially desirable because it democratizes the energy industry and it is inclusive. Now is the opportunity for small businesses and LGUs to participate in the industry because energy is a very capital intensive. So you talk about hundreds of millions or billions if you put up like a 100 megawatt power plant. But if I look at a virtual power plant, actually I can put a 5 kilowatt power plant on my rooftop. It's the same. Okay, it is just a miniature, very, very small system compared to 100 megawatts, but it provides the same power. Okay, now, so this is the mandate, for example, for the LGUs to go into renewable energy. Government buildings urged to shift to solar energy, and this was provided by the Interagency Efficiency and Conservation Committee led by the DOE. And all government agencies, including government-owned and controlled corporations, state universities, and colleges, and local government units are encouraged to tap solar energy. And they're given 3 years, by the way, to do it, at least 20% of their power consumption. Okay? But if you look at it, if you understand into it, what is the mindset behind it? It still looks at government buildings or local government units as simple consumers of electricity. But I would like to go beyond that and look at the opportunity. So, for me, what is the strategic positioning of LGUs in the energy industry? There are 3 positioning that I can think of. One is an LGU, a mayor or a governor, a city mayor or a governor, they would say, okay, I am an LGU, I am a political entity, I am just a consumer of renewable energy. So what I can do to comply would be to install solar PV system on our buildings, primarily for self-consumption. And my objective is to comply with government mandates and to reduce, of course, our electricity expenses. Now, if I want to so that I can serve my other constituents, I can consolidate demand for the barangays, for example, to make private sector participation attractive. I'll use my province as an example. There are 1,209 barangays in Bohol. Just imagine if I deal with each one of them and submit a PPP to them, it doesn't make sense because these are very small installations of maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 kilowatts. But if the provincial government would come in and consolidate that, okay, that 1,209, if they would install 10 kilowatt each, okay, that would be around 12 megawatts. That would be very attractive already. Okay? Now, the second option is for the LGU as a promoter of renewable energy. Natingin ko dito, parang mas papugi lang to eh. Okay, the LGU undertakes a green energy program, for example, to encourage local businesses and constituents to shift to renewable energy, and they can even give tax incentives and support program participants. But I think the game changer for the LGU is this. The LGU goes into the renewable energy business. Just as the LGU operates a public market, an LGU operates a municipal water system. Why can't they operate their own renewable energy business? And there are two ways of doing it that I could think of. One is they would go into the traditional way, meaning they would install solar on the rooftop, consolidate all of that, and then work with the DU and then sell wholesale power to the rooftops. There is a model of this done in Romblon by Romblon Electric Cooperative by Rene, who is also a member of Center. What he did was the electric cooperative rented the rooftops of some of the barangay gyms, and the electric cooperative installed, I think, 50 kilowatts from the gym, direct, and then fed that power direct to the distribution lines of the electric cooperative. So what happens is, if I were the LGU, I could work with the electric cooperative and say, hey, I can make available all of my rooftops to you. Okay? The other one is think in terms of like agriculture. If I were a mayor, still, no, one thing that I can do, okay, is I'll borrow money from land bank, and then I would rent out to my constituents solar PV systems. Just like a local government chief executive can buy farm tractors and then rent them out to the constituents. If I can do that in agriculture and have farm tractors to help my constituents, instead of using Carabao, they rent the farm tractor from the LGU, why can't a family in my locality rent solar panels and inverters, install it in the rooftop, and then have power directly consumed from the system, and the rest will be fed to the grid by a net metering. This is exactly the same concept. But the problem is you need somebody to consolidate because somebody has to borrow a big amount. And so the LGU can say borrow 100 million from Land Bank or DBP, and then distribute it or even channel it to local multipurpose cooperatives or microfinance institutions. In that way, they are now into the renewable energy business. So I think I would like to bring that discussion for the LGUs. Don't think only as a consumer of renewable energy. Think of how are you going to participate in a 1 trillion investment opportunity so that you can help generate income to your locality. So that's the only thing that I can do. The PPP is a legal framework. And by the way, based on experience, these are the things that I had successful PPP with a municipality in Bohol. And these are the things that I think is very important. Number one, the chief executive has to assign a trusted staff to work closely with the private proponent. Okay? Because it's very difficult to get an appointment with the mayor or governor. Second, they have to choose the PPP selection committee ASAP to discuss the details. We cannot discuss it with the mayor. We have to discuss it with the committee. And then both the LGU and the private sector must be very clear on the legal steps to follow. Ano yung step by step na gawin natin, nakaintindihan tayo. And then be transparent to the public sector proponent, a private sector proponent on what you want. Be transparent. Basta sabihin mo, and then let us negotiate kung magkakaintindihan ba tayo o hindi. And then respect the time of everyone. We are all busy. Ang pinakamasakit para sa private sector proponent, pupunta ka sa isang office ng government, you are trying to help them. Maghintay ka na ang tagal-tagal pagkatapos canceled pa yung meeting mo. No? We are there to help. Kung if you say we meet this, just as if your mayor, if the governor comes to my office, sabihin ko, let's meet at 10 o'clock, I will clear all my schedule out of respect for that person. Ganun lang yung level. Okay? As much as possible, keep the ball on the court of the private sector. Huwag mo patagalin sa LGU. Kung natanggap nyo na, aksyonan nyo, ibalik nyo. so that the things will move faster. And then, please handle your internal politics, including the opposition. Ayaw namin ng politika. We just want to do business. Ganun lang po kasimple yun. So, thank you very much for that.